up, guys? This is Super Mike. We're gonna do a. Just wanted to do this. Kept putting it off. Sorry. About this brother here is John Carruthers Stanley. All right, so he was. His father was white, mama was black, and he, had an interesting history. So we're going to just go over the account in the book by E. Franklin Frazier. E. Franklin Frazier, of course, is a sociologist at the time. He was documenting Black history. And his book will show that. You can get on Amazon if you want it. It's a small book. This part, he has two of them, but this one is just a little pamphlet, really. So the Free Negro Family, a study of family origins before the Civil War. So Black people it just goes over real quick, little snippets of different families, different free, prominent people in different Black communities, all over the country, actually. In the country, of course, usually it was the west side of the country was like, Illinois and all of that. So, yeah, let's go through this real quick. It's going to be pretty quick, and I'm just going to read through it so that way we can get John Carruthers Stanley on record. And the thing is, he, it was kind of interesting to me because, the way white people tell stuff, when you look him up, it should be different than the way we tell stuff. And if somebody was a coon, he was a coon. But it's good for us to know and to be able to study it so we can see the origin of this thing. And basically, he was a brother that, his father was white. Let me see here. Yeah. His father was white. Mom was a Black woman during the slave. He actually was freed by this woman that he ends up being his mistress. And it's interesting nowadays. Mistress means you're actually cheating on somebody, but back in that time, that was like the female master. So it was obviously so common that these people were having sex that it became one and the same name. So mistress is just when your master was a woman. And I guess it was one and the same, women did the same thing once they got a hold of a Black male slave. All right. I don't know why I don't have the page right. Sorry, guys. Hold on a second. There it is. All right. So on page 45. It's just for us to get some understanding. So on page 45 of this book by E. Franklin Frazier, he writes here for us. So the town of New Bern, and this is in North Carolina, the town of New Bern also had its community of free colored families that numbered 104 in 1830. And Bassett, he's the one that wrote Anti-Slavery Leaders of North Carolina in 1898. So Bassett has furnished a description of some of the free Negroes in New Bern before the Civil War. John C. Stanley was a mulatto, the son of an African-born woman. So she was actually born in Africa, according to this, who was brought to New Bern, North Carolina from the West Indies. So now that just tells you this is what they're saying about her. You know, it was probably true, but you never know. So she was broken in the West Indies. She was actually brought from the West Indies before the Revolutionary War. He was a barber by trade, and throughout his days of manhood was also known as Barber Jack. He was a faithful servant. Okay, so he was loyal Negro, a loyal Negro. He was loyal to the white people. He was a faithful servant. And in 1808, he was liberated by the General Assembly on petition of Miss Lydia Stewart, into whose possession he had come. He soon began to acquire Negro slaves. See? So this is how loyal he was. As soon as he was manumitted, because they had knew what they had, as soon as that, he basically believed that he was a white man. He operated like a white man. But he knew he wasn't a white man. But this is the mentality that this man had. But his mother was born in Africa, broken in the West Indies. You know, the West Indies is there to break people. Broke them there, broke her there. And then, of course, the father was the slave master. So this boy has no chance at any black pride. So this is where this stuff comes from. So soon he began to acquire Negro slaves and land, till at length he had 64 slaves and as many more bound free Negroes working his several plantations, says Colonel John D. Whitford. He was popular too, with both slave and free Negroes. Generally, notwithstanding, he was a hard taskmaster. Yes, he would work all well and fed and clothed all indifferently. He married a Moor, a copper-colored woman who was not a slave. He got his start in the barber business, although he made much of his money by discounting notes. So he was some type of a trader of equities or something. Certain white men of means who did not care to go openly into business of sharp discounting took him for a partner and furnished the means. He had 3 sons, John, Alexander, and Charles. John became an expert bookkeeper and was employed in the captivity and was employed in that capacity. So John became an expert bookkeeper and was employed in that capacity by a prominent firm. John C. Stanley amassed a fortune supposed to be worth more than $40,000. And of course, in those days, that was extremely a lot of money. It took people a year to raise $100. They would work for $100 a year. So $40,000 was a lot of money. But in his old age, he lost much of it by bad management. His family held themselves aloof from the other Negroes of the community. They were members of the Presbyterian Church, to which Miss Stewart, his former mistress, had belonged. This lady lived till 1822, and when old and feeble, could be seen on the streets in fine weather, supported on the arm of her faithful old servant. Now 14 years a free man, thus she took the air, and thus she went to church on Sunday. When the couple had arrived at the church, John would conduct her to her pew and then leave her to take his seat with his old family, with his own family, in the place assigned to colored people. In New Bern, especially, there were a number of such thrifty colored men. Notable among them was John Good, and you guys can check that out. He was a son of his master and for a long time a slave. When the master died, his two surviving children, who were daughters, had but little property besides this boy. John Good, who was a barber as well, John took up the task of supporting them. He boarded them in good houses and otherwise provided for them well. His faithfulness won him many friends among the best citizens, and when both of his mistresses were married, these friends united to persuade the owners to liberate him as a reward for his services. Unfortunately, freedom proved no boon. He fell into the bad habits and took to drink and soon died. There were other thrifty and notable free Negroes in the same place, as, for example, John Y. Green, a carpenter and a contractor. So that's E. Franklin Frazier's take on John C. Stanley. If you look him up on the internet, which I'm not trying to make this that long, you'll see only that he was a slave owner, and that they kind of make it seem such as, oh, how could this? Oh, see, black people own slaves too. Black people own slaves. Well, we know that he was a colored man. He was a black man, but he was actually, his mentality was so white, and that's why they freed him. They freed the people that they knew either was so loyal to them that they would probably buy slaves and try to pretend like them, and just because he was smart and good at making money, so they freed him. So he was like just like an uppity Negro. And nowadays, this sort of mentality, man, he would never marry a black woman. But at that time, of course, that's what he had to do because he realized he was colored. But it looks like he was in love with that white mistress of his. So anyway, guys, that's it. John C. Stanley. You guys can look him up. But yeah, he was a black man, but his father was the slave master, and his mother was broken in the Caribbean. So she was definitely making sure that she did not, go against her massa. So that was it there. Peace out, John C. Stanley. That's a piece of black history too. How to make a coon. All right, bye. But the coon behavior, and I'm going to say this about the coon behavior. The coon behavior is actually a survival mechanism. It's something that we had to produce in order for us to keep our genetics alive so long through such a horrible time as enslavement and Jim Crow and all of these oppressive sorts of. So the coon behavior is a survival technique. But once you become free, it is counter freedom. So we get mad at coons, but they just don't have a place anymore. But at a certain time, the coon was the winner, but he's not the winner today because you have to be a free person when you're trying to do something for your own and separate from white people. All right, peace.